don't do this. This means when you dive, I dived for years. I have 3,500 hours of scuba diving. You always do this to indicate that you can breathe, that everything's okay. But this, to my new knowledge, has become a symbol of supremacy in the United States. I never knew that. And I just thought, gosh, everyone who's a diver, because this means I want to go up, this means we're going down, this means everything's okay, and that means I'm in trouble. Okay, those are the international symbols for diving. So this means everything's good. Okay. We're going to start with you, Kevin. You've got 2-3 minutes. Please introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Okay. My name's Kevin Palmer. I run my own business called Ikaya Wealth. I'm a Cat 1. It's not a big business. I have a history. I've run medium-sized brokerages with up to 20 brokers and about 10 admin staff. And my biggest problem, well, not a problem, but I have an aversion to employing people because of that experience of running a medium-sized brokerage. All their problems became my problems, and I didn't have enough time to actually do income-earning business. So I pulled away, set up my own business, and I'm quite happy. I'm not struggling. I work from home, so when COVID came, it didn't really change my life unduly. I can still work at the same desk and the same processes and the same infrastructure that I've always done. But what I am experiencing is that my clients have problems, and we're having to address those at a daily level at the moment. So.
Kevin, what sort of problems are they experiencing in your experience?
Not having any money. I mean, I'm sure everybody's seeing the same at the moment, but there are guys, most of my client base tend to be entrepreneurs, but people who run their own businesses. Some are in service industries like myself, and they're not as hard hit, but those who sell widgets and they can't get out and about and they can't do anything, have got no income coming in, and they've generally got a staff element that they have to pay at the same time. And the UIF, though a great thing in theory, doesn't seem to be working very well for most of my acquaintances who are having to go that way.
Excellent. Good. Thank you for that, Kevin. Desigan.
Yes, Pav. Okay, my name is Desigan Mutusami. I recently made a very bold move after 16 years of working with an institution as a financial advisor. May I mention names or keep that out? Doesn't matter. Okay, so I worked for Standard Bank. I thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to follow my passion in helping people solve various problems. And after 16 years, I realized it was time for me to grow out of the cocoon that I was operating in. Working for the institution, I did not define myself in any form or space. I literally took on any customer. I was scattered, by and large, solving various issues with banking sector, transactional banking, which was good at the time. It helped create or build trust with my client and credibility. And that obviously led to me growing my practice to almost R1 billion assets under management, which wasn't my ultimate target. I do want to grow beyond that. And I got an opportunity to join Advice Works at the beginning of this year, similar to my colleague Mark Sido. And I took it. And the challenge that I've been having is I resigned on the 31st of March, dead smack lockdown. It has not been simple sailing. I didn't expect it to be simple in the beginning or in any other scenario or circumstance, but it is extra challenging as well to transition customers and give them that comfort in knowing that I'm still the best custodian for their current and future wealth. I'm fairly scattered. It's a massive mind shift for me, working in corporate for that many years. I do know that I am an entrepreneur in many senses, but I also need outside guidance. And Pavlo, you have always been an influence and inspiration to me. So I'm very grateful to be part of this roundtable and to engage with all of you. And yes, I'm very excited. Today is a turning point in my life. And thank you for inviting me and having me on the roundtable.
Thank you. Big difference, right? Big difference when you walk around with a business card that has a big institutional brand on it, and all of a sudden you don't have that business card. You have to work a lot harder to get into, you've got to work a lot harder to do home invasions, because that's what selling has become. It's a process of home invasion. It's amazing what I've seen in terms of people's homes. But good move, bold move. And, you know, me having a little bit of knowledge of you, I hope it pays off. And I hope you're with a good organization now. So
Thank you.
We'll get through your questions. I've got some nice questions from you here. Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, hi guys. Mark Sado. I last years again work with AdviceWorks. I joined 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago. The previous 5.5 years I was at Standard Bank as well. I've also just recently made the move down to Cape Town, so that's been quite interesting. And COVID has actually helped me quite a lot with that, because all my clients are based in Joburg, and I was going to be traveling between Joburg and Cape Town and Joburg once a month. I did it for February, and then COVID came, and now we've just moved everything online, which has been absolutely amazing. I'm actually in Plet this week, living in Cape Town. I'm in Plet for the week, being online, finding I can literally work wherever I am with an internet connection and my laptop, which has been nice. So clients have been welcoming in taking things online, not too concerned. A lot of my clients are in the corporate world, so they've kind of all gone home, and Microsoft Teams and Zoom has become the new norm, which has been nice. One of my biggest things is, so I'm in the process of transitioning my business to a fee-based business. So we've done about half of the business is now fee-based and not commissions or assets. And I now I'm looking to acquire new clients. Originally it was going to be Cape Town, but it doesn't really matter where it is now in the world, but it's in a fee-based environment, and specific type of clients. I work with female executives, typically in financial services, and that's the niche I want to stay in. Those are the type of clients I really enjoy working with and can add the most value to.
Very nice focus, Mark. It's actually, when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, I was quite surprised, because it's the first time, not the first time, but seldom do I see a financial advisor who positions who they serve rather than what they do. And I thought that your positioning on LinkedIn was really, really well put across. It's very specific. It's to the point. Really liked it. Really liked it. Very unusual. I need to tell you, very unusual.
Thanks.
Excellent. Paul.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, it's Paul Tennyson. I come actually from the tide space. Previously came from the property industry, probably about 7 years. Studied something completely different to that, information systems. So it's been a bit of a journey. So I only really came into the financial planning space probably late 20s, early 30s, with the intention of becoming a broker consultant, actually. Ended up starting up as a financial planner, and yeah, pretty much cut my teeth in the tide space with Liberty for about 7-8 years. And from the first year, it was always the goal to further my studies, do my postgrad in financial planning, get my CFP accreditation, and then move into the independent space. Took me a little bit longer than what I'd planned. but yeah, I moved into the independent space about 2 years ago, beginning of 2018. So I do operate as an IFA. I do operate as an IFA now with a company called At2. They're a Pretoria-based FSP. They've got a tide side, which works quite a lot with discovery. I'm very happy in the IFA space. My biggest challenge, look, I'm not a big business. I literally have a PA that works for me part-time. The transition from the tide space to the IFA space has been quite a challenge for me. It's just been just over two years and 3 months now. And I'm only now starting to really find my feet. COVID-19 for me, Corona hasn't really affected me that much. I've actually found that I'm probably going to have my best month this month, or possibly last month, but the last 2-3 months have probably been the best months that I've had in the business since I came across into the IFA space, which has been great. The only other way it's affected my clients, I deal with sort of a fair mix of clients coming from the tide space. I left some of them sort of behind, the ones that didn't really want to come with, or the ones that just weren't sort of on board really with me going into the independent space. And since coming into the IFA space, I've sort of started to focus on the type of client that I want to deal with a bit more. And that sort of, I think, has been linked very much to my growing confidence in the business, my growing confidence with expanding my education and doing my CFP. I feel a bit more confident to deal with higher profile clients, higher earning clients. And I find I'm working a lot with a couple of doctors in the sort of public space. That's sort of a niche that seems to be expanding a little bit. They haven't really been affected at all by COVID at all. I've got a couple of entrepreneurs. Some of them have been affected, some of them haven't. That's just how sort of Corona has affected me and some of my clients. I found quite interesting just to listen to what Mark now was saying about transitioning to a fee-based. That is a medium to long-term goal of mine. There's just so many challenges that I face. I'm not quite sure where to start. So, and it's almost like, even being with At2 in a business where there's 150 to 200 brokers, there's not a lot of those brokers are IFAs. I would say, at least 75 to 80% of them are tied brokers to discovery. So there's not a lot in the way of mentorship, that you could sort of walk a road with somebody to say, okay, well, this is the road that you need to walk. This is how you develop your business, your systems, and your processes. And then I just want to share one thing that I have done in the last, like Mark has taken his stuff online. I have implemented something, the whole digital signature set up on the Signifo platform. And that's, I'm quite a slow adopter when it comes to technology, but that has absolutely, transformed my thinking, and it saved me so much time. So that is maybe just one example of something very practical that I'm looking for, things like that, that can have a pretty quick and pretty dramatic impact on my business, and which will free up time for me to actually, take things forward and basically, turn this into a proper business.
Excellent. Good. Nice and detailed, which is what I expected from you.
Okay. It's one of my weaknesses, by the way.
It's also a strength if it's put in the right place. Wesley, nice to meet you.
Morning, Pavlo.
Sorry,
morning.
before you continue, Matthew, welcome. We're doing the roundtable. We're just going around doing a quick set of introductions. And I'm calling people out as we move through the screen. When I come to you, if you could just introduce yourself, talk a bit about your organization. I know that you into managing fairly extensive broker networks. So we look forward to hearing from you the moment I come to you.
Yeah, apologies I'm late, everyone. I had to get kids to exams.
No worries. Wesley.
Yeah, sorry, good morning, everyone. So sort of my journey started up in Johannesburg. So I'm based in Cape Town at the moment. I started in 2003. And like with most of us, we started off with Liberty Life because of their RTP training program. And through various walks, was with Liberty for about a year and a half, moved to an independent brokerage, also very much discovery focused for another year and a half, 2 years. And then at that point in time, I thought, listen, I can do this better and cheaper on my own. And that was around about 2006, 2007, just before the 08 financial crisis. Went off on my own, moved down to Cape Town and gave it a shot. And I don't think I was fantastically successful. I still think I needed a little bit more experience. And then obviously just cut my teeth down here with sort of getting new clients and so on and so forth. So that was 2008, 2012, I then moved into the banking sector, like with Desigan. I moved in with Nedbank, and sort of it gave me a little bit more structure there, and that helped in terms of my focus of where do I fit in, how am I going to help with clients. From a mentorship point of view, I mean, I bumped into Johan Boshoff. We did our CFP together in 2011 at University of Stellenbosch. So we've got a bit of a history, not all of it fantastic, but most of it good. But yeah, so, sorry, at that point I left Nedbank in 2017. So also March, but thankfully 3 years before COVID. So Desigan, I know where you come from in terms of the move from the corporate structure through to being independent. And everything in terms of the move has been to be better, and obviously setting up a more digital focused type of business. So Kevin, where we are both our own individual, we're running our own practices and so on and so forth. Where I get stuck a lot is I don't trust pretty much anyone else to do the work for me. I think I don't have anyone that works with me. I'm an IFA. I have my own contracts. I do my own work. I do my own admin. I do my own client reviews. I do my own everything, purely because I'm stuck in an eternal point where I can't trust anyone else to do the work, because it's my responsibility, and also it's my name on the line in my license and so on and so forth. So COVID hasn't affected me too much. When I started Paradigm Shift back in 2017, it was very much a digital focus. I've always worked from home, kept overheads low, everything digital that I can work with clients, be it digital signatures, online application forms, so on and so forth. I pretty much implemented that right from the beginning. So like with most, it's business as usual. Clients have been affected, but I'm fortunate enough that the majority of my clients, we haven't had to sort of exit out of cancel policies or exit out of investments. We haven't been that drastically affected on that side there. But like with everyone, it's now we look forward to see what the detriment, the economy, or the detriment of all the decisions that have been made up until now will have on the economy going forward, and how that is going to affect our clients for the next 5 to 10 years on that side there. So that's briefly just sort of my history. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you, Wesley. Doug.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Interesting that we've been included here. I mean, I'm one of the BDMs along with Arifa. I look after Kevin. Morning, Kevin. How are you? And yeah, but it's nice to be on here, nice to hear, and hopefully we can share some aspects of what we've done. I mean, my history, I've actually came from a similar position to the rest of you. I set up a financial advisory business in London called Sable Private Wealth Management. We had our niche was South African, Australian, New Zealand expats living in the UK, who had a very different tax status to many of the other people that were being advised in the UK, and that was our niche. We sold the business to First Contact, who rebranded Sable First Contact, and they now, most of the offices are based in South Africa just for the cheapness of it. I think they're based in Kenilworth. So my history in financial services is generally has been looking after individual private clients, but it's been a nice change to move to Stanlib and Innate to help assist people like yourselves. And having come from the other side, it's quite a nice opportunity to help financial advisors like yourselves from both sides. Since coming back from London, I was with Cannon Asset Managers under Dr. Adrian Saville. We were then bought by Citadel, which was a transaction that didn't work particularly well. And they then sold us to Bidvest. And since then, I've joined Stanlib. And it's an amazing team we've got under Georgina. And I think really, really nice business to work for. And it's especially given the fact that it's a digital business. Innate. And I know a number of you sort of theme today seems to be that you're looking for ways to make your businesses more streamlined and through digital and the use of technology. So nice to be here, and look forward to hearing what the rest of you say and then some of your advice, Pavlo.
Excellent. Good. Thank you, Doug. Tian.
From Scotland. Sorry, how's my internet connection?
No, it's good enough. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, I studied engineering. When it came to London, worked for Royal Bank of Scotland for 2.5 years. Went back to South Africa, did a bit of volunteer work for a year, lectured at the University of Zululand for 4.5 years, then had the privilege to start working for my dad in his independent brokerage. So I've been with him for the last 5 years, and you know, as he said, I'm his retirement plan. But with that retirement plan comes a lot of baggage. I mean, he's got 30 years of experience, and I've been with him for the last 5 years, and I mean, he's taking a step back while I'm taking a bit, you know, step forward, taking over, taking more business. And so it's an absolute privilege to come under an existing business like that with processes and systems and a client base in place. But as I've said, there's a lot of legacy issues, and you know, I see the future changing, and it is changing, and as we need to change with the times, and so to steer it in a different, new direction is a bit of a challenge that I'm finding. And then also we're based in Mpangeni. We're in the Gamadulas on the north coast in Zululand. Mostly our client base is Zulu, as Richards Bay and Mpangeni, and a lot of industrial, big industries, you know, RBM, Mondi, Fourscore, Bell, and you know, for me, defining your client, identifying and defining that, I think is important. And you know, I'd love to be where Mark is, you know, saying, you know, lady executives. That's what I'm going to go for. And I guess I'm slowly building up more engineers, because there's a lot of engineers in our area, and I'd love to be a niche in terms of something like you know, young professional engineers as an example. So for me, that's also a big part of it. But the reason I'm in Scotland is I came over in March to have our baby. I'm married the enemy. Came over to Scotland to have a baby here. Got stuck, and 3-4 months later, I'm still here. And luckily enough, with tech, I can work from the in-laws.
Yes, that's quite a story. Stuck on the pound. Well, at least you're in with in-laws, okay. I suppose there's a benefit there, but at what was $22.50 to now $21.50, it could be the most expensive 3 months of your life.
I'm really dependent on the in-laws here, so very fortunate.
Excellent, good, nice story. Thank you.
Thanks.
Aretha.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so like Doug said, I'm a business development manager like him for Stanlib and Innate. My career stems back 19 years with the same company. I could see Mark going, oh my word, but he already knows that. So I look after Desigid and Mark who are on this webinar. And I think my role as a business development manager is really to be there to support the financial advisors that I look after. It's about understanding their business and growing the wealth of their clients and just being there for them in every way to make sure that they're able to do that for their clients. I'm really looking forward to this session. A few years ago, my hubby and I decided to open up a little business of our own because he was retrenched. And it meant that we needed to, well, he actually started contracting his services out to the same company. And it's meant that I've had to learn a lot about opening or running a business and working as well. So I'm hoping to take a lot out of it on a personal level and also get to know the advisors that I work with and their business a little bit more. Lockdown for me has been challenging. I'm a very social being. I need to be out there in their offices drinking tea with them and chatting. And but I've learned over the last few months to be able to have those discussions digitally, which is a challenge. And I can't wait until I get back to a new normal where I can actually go into an office and chat. So yes, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Johan.
Good morning, and firstly, thank you very much to Innate for this opportunity. It's the highlight for 2020.
Oh dear, I hope I don't disappoint you.
I didn't want to buy into you going from left to right on your screen. I thought you were doing it by age, but I'd see you did start with Kevin. So I come from, I was born in the Eastern Cape in Port Elizabeth, started my working career in pharmaceuticals as a salesperson. After about 5 years, then I landed up in Johannesburg as a brand manager or product manager, as it's called in pharmaceuticals. Learned how not to do things predominantly. Got retrenched out of that company and moved to another pharmaceutical company for 18 months and then joined Liberty. In the first year of being at Liberty, the company that got sold out and the first and biggest Provident Fund client.
I'm not sure where your speaker is, but it's gone very, very scrappy. You need to, in screen engagements, guys, you mostly, depending on where your speaker is, need to keep relatively still. Okay, to keep things moving, while Johan is sorting out his sound, Matthew, let's go through to you. And the moment Johan's back and his sound is working, we'll get him sorted.
Pavlo, thanks. Can you hear me properly?
Very well, thank you.
Again, apologies everybody about arriving late. My background is I've been involved in financial services for about 22 years across most of the industries I started in the olden days in the 1996 in your true stockbroking type businesses. So I learned how to trade, prop trade and derivatives, etc. I moved across to Investec after that, was part of Investec Securities in the sort of more the short-term team where, again, we traded, then joined RMB and asset management, private client asset management, and then joined Sanlam where I managed Eastern Cape and Southern Cape, Sanlam Private Investments. And then I came back to Johannesburg in 2008 post the financial crisis and was with Standard Bank for 9 years where I looked after ultra high net worth individuals, traded stocks and built a multi-manager for them. I left Standard Bank, must be about 2 years ago, and started a private equity firm with a couple of people that I know. Basically what we're currently doing at the moment is we've got a business in the US where we're buying medical facilities in Florida. So that we've been doing for about 1.5 years. We've got a hospital in Pretoria that we've been equipping because we like, the healthcare industry. We involved in property in Europe and locally. And then on top of that, we have a wealth and investment business. And why is that important is because it tends to be the ham between the bread. It's quite a good business to complement the other businesses. The wealth and investment business is a Cat 1, Cat 2. We are in the process of applying for a 2A at the moment. We do financial advising, but generally concentrate more on the Cat 2 and the 2A, given the changes in regulations, etc. I find the Cat 2 just makes the financial planning and advising side a lot easier. COVID, I think it's been interesting. It has been frustrating from a personal point of view, but from a business perspective, I think it's the financial service industry certainly locally needed a shake-up. I think, and COVID certainly is doing that. So, I mean, for us, it's because we've been pretty new for only been running for about 2 years. It's presented a lot of opportunity. For example, is we run all the products from CFDs to single stock futures to forex to stockbroking, portfolio management, multi-management, etc. But what you have seen is with online and new systems and new technologies, if you look at N8, but not only N8, trading platforms around the world, the costs are dropping. We trade stocks, we create products around the world that are relatively cheap, and you can get access into the United States pretty quickly these days. So it has, I think COVID-19 has just speeded up a couple of the trends that were there, but now it actually makes technology is very, very important. From what has been, Pavlo, what has been very frustrating in the industry is certainly under COVID-19 regulation has been quite quite frustrating, as well as sort of government inefficiencies. I mean, it's taking quite a long time to actually get things opened or operating. Yeah. So, I mean, from a business perspective, we see massive growth. We're going to be launching a couple of products over the course of the weeks to come, and hopefully, from a responsibility point of view, we can create jobs. You know, that certainly is foremost from a business perspective for people in South Africa. We want to create jobs.
Excellent.
That's pretty much it.
Good. Thank you, Matthew. Johan, we'll end off with you. Let's give it another go. Just unmute. There we go.
Is this better?
Much better.
Okay. Sorry to...
Don't worry.
I'm going to battle to convince you now that I am a firm believer in technology, and I come from the Eastern Cape. As a child, I had a burning desire to have my own business. My parents suggested that I study pharmacy. I thought that that sounds like a business. Was not very good at physical chemistry. Eventually, didn't complete my studies. Went and did national service, and in that time started working for a pharmaceutical company, which doesn't exist today anymore. Well, not in its same, under the same name. They made me an offer I didn't understand. I landed up in Johannesburg in a marketing position. Then went through a restructuring and was retrenched out of that company. How valuable an experience that was at the time, obviously I didn't think so. Eventually that company became my biggest client to this day in financial services. I then joined another pharmaceutical company for 18-month period, and then in that time, a friend of mine that we worked together in the first pharmaceutical company joined Liberty, and he nagged me to go and speak to them, and I said, look, cars, houses, and insurance never. In 1990, January, I joined Liberty. I was with them for 14 years, and I've been an IFA now for going on 8. I operate from Melkbos Strand, and I very much, in my time at Liberty, listened to all those big, boring branch meetings of where all the consultants shied away from working. And the two areas was predominantly the retirement fund industry. So I went there, and there was a version due to how we got paid, not to do business with companies like Stanlib, but to do the contractual Liberty policy fee expensive product distribution. So the takeoff in the business initially was a bit slow because of the remuneration from unit trust companies versus the contractual business. I have 2 staff that works for me, and in the last quarter of last year, a client came to see me regarding his trust and will. He then looked at the technology in my office and made some recommendations. I said to him, I'm quite sure you understand that all these numbers that you're throwing at me doesn't make sense, but if that's going to be the output, then please install a server. I work from a home office that's purpose-built when I built my home 20 years ago to be able to be with my kids in their school years. My staff come to my office, and with a server in COVID, well, in January, the business plan was 2 days a month I want to consult online using Skype was the plan. Little did I know that it would be 22 days a month. And the technology in my office runs at 5G speed. I consult online. My staff logs in from Saldanha and Darling into the server, works online. My kids go to school and varsity online. And it's just been the best investment that I've made as far as technology is concerned.
Excellent.
This is very much entrepreneurs, business owners, but also entrepreneurial thinking people in big organizations. That's why those organizations exist. I like working with that profile of client because there's typically a trust, multiple companies in terms of structure and that's why I have more fun.
Excellent. Good. Thank you very much. So guys, if I listen carefully to the comments from everybody, we have a few issues in strategy that we can tackle, and that's where we probably should start. It's around the affordability of clients to invest in your service, to invest in the products that you offer, to invest in advice, good advice. You know, so how do we get people to switch from product to advice as a driver for positioning your service, for positioning your business? The second thing that I want to raise with you is the idea of an asset versus income, because it's becoming increasingly apparent that the income model is disappointing more people than perhaps it might have some years back. I'm seeing this extensively at the moment in the COVID economy, because the income model alone is a model that really relies heavily on relationships. And it might sound completely counterintuitive because your entire sector is based on relationships. But I want to talk a little bit about what that means, and specifically, Tian, in the transfer of relationships from a founder to a successor. And I think that might be quite useful for you and hopefully helpful. From there, we'll move on to momentum. So momentum for me is really all about understanding your brand, what you stand for, what makes you different in a very competitive market space, how you land a message, how you find the individuals you want to work with, how you land a message with them, and how you engage with them in a manner that you convert them into long-standing clients. So brand becomes an issue. I want to talk a little bit about BMW. There was a wonderful, wonderful insight I got in working with BMW for a number of years. They had dealer principals. A dealer principal is effectively a BMW agency. There were 54 of them at the time in South Africa. And this must be now 6 years ago. I worked with 24 of them to help them learn how to hunt as opposed to farm leads. And there were some really very interesting insights over there I'd like to share with you. And then digital engagement on screens, especially. The comment, Johan, you made, and I think the comment, who else made that comment? There was a comment on working across screens and how you engage across screens. I think really it came from you, Tian, given the fact that you are stuck in probably one of the furthest north places to South Africa that we know of, other than perhaps Iceland or Greenland or, should we test my geography? I can tell you it's better than Trump's. Okay. From there, I'd like to go into fulfillment. Fulfillment is everything to do with operations. And operations, in my view, is really centered around how, when a lead comes in and a lead converts, a lead is fulfilled. But importantly, it talks to the people piece and it talks to the administration piece. And what's really interesting about the challenges you're experiencing around changing regulations that come through in the financial services space is I've got, I think through Auric, we've got about 45, 50 odd clients in the US. And the US government makes a business of finding businesses because that's how it earns a lot of its income. It drops its tax rates, but you pay taxes in different ways. So it's a highly regulated environment in many ways, and how those early stage businesses deal with compliance and regulation is very interesting. And that'll take us into a deep discussion around using technology smartly. And then the last piece that I think would cover most of the questions that were put forward is really change. You know, how do you manage change? How do you activate change? And how do you take change and turn it into an advantage for yourself? You know, we're in a crisis at the moment. If I look back to the 2008 crisis, and I look back to the 37 other crises we have faced between 2008 and now in South Africa, from Nenegate to you name it, it's all over the place. In every single instance that there has been a crisis, there's been a tick up in digitization, a tick up in the companies that went and found that change, recognized what the change delivered, capitalized on it, and then, let's call it, experienced people in the industry say, look what that crisis did. It changed the way our industry works. Crises don't change anything. It's how people deal with them that changes everything. And I'd like to share a few examples with you on that. And then change in relation to government, the issues that you raised, Matthew, government and COVID legislation. To give you a sense, from an Aurik point of view, we've got clients in Hong Kong, we've got clients in Singapore, we've got clients in the UK, in the EU, in the US, and in Africa. And I have a very, very particular view on governments. I think, by and large, they mostly disappoint. And by and large, they should mostly be ignored. And I don't mean it in terms of regulation, I mean it in terms of mindset. And I'll talk to a very interesting debate I had with quite a large collection, actually, of psychiatrists and psychologists. And we were talking about what mindset does and why mindset matters. So I'd like to cover those issues. And I think probably the best place to start would be with mindset. Because after all, it's the only thing that we have 100% control over. And the view that I have is, quite honestly, based on what I've seen over the years, and I'm sharing with you the insights of having worked with now, I think it's about 2,800, let's call it SMEs. And we define an SME as a business doing between $1 and $30 million a year of annual revenues. Mindset matters beyond almost anything else. And at the beginning of the COVID crisis, we presented a couple of webinars called Build a Battle Plan to Survive COVID. And the first thing I called up on that webinar was the change cycle that was specified and deliberated and developed by a lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She died in, I think, 2002 or 2004, but she had dedicated her entire life, this American-Swiss psychologist, to understanding the grief cycle, that when somebody loses someone very special to them, they go through a process where at first, when they receive the news of the potential ill health or accident that took place, threatening the life of the person close to them, is communicated, the first thing they say is, no, not possible, denial. As it becomes evident that this is taking place, and it's likely, they go through a period of deep frustration, and that frustration expresses itself as anger or fear. I remember in, I think, the first week of January, when I realized from my Hong Kong clients that this thing is coming and it's going to sweep from east to west, and the likelihood that we will be locked down in the next few months will put us in a position where all the plans we had set as a business at the end of last year were going to be compromised. Guys, at the very beginning of the year, I was in South Africa. I then went back to the UK and then came back and got locked down. So I'm in between where you are, Tian. I'm meant to be in the UK at the moment. Then I was meant to be back here. Then I was meant to be in the States. All those plans got smashed. And the first expression, the first feeling I went through was one of extreme anger. I rolled up my windows in my car and I told everybody what I thought of them. And thank God the windows were rolled up. But I won't forget that period of anger. So she then argues, from there you get dumped into a well of depression. And depression is a deeply personal thing, and I would never ever comment extensively around it, because some people are prone to it. Some people have circumstances where it's the last straw. Depending on your history, depending on a whole lot of issues, your ability to manage depression is deeply personal. I firmly believe that you should never manage depression on your own. And I say this as someone who works very closely with our clients. But anyway, you sit in this well of depression, and the only way out of it is to act. So no amount of thought can move you out of a depression. No amount of reading, no amount of listening. You have to physically act. And this knowledge lies deep, deep, deep in the Upanishads, which were written over 6,000 years ago in India, where they say, when you're in a situation, they refer to it as tamas, of it's a dark, depressed, brooding state. You know, when you sit there and you just want to punch that person across the screen. I experience that a lot with Trump personally. And I get furious and beyond angry around that level of short-term narcissistic thinking. And you sit there and you brood and you say, this government, why can't they do this? And Eskom, why can't they get right? If you don't move yourself out of that space, then that becomes the narrative of everything you do. If you don't move yourself out of depression, you will only ever see things that reinforce that negative mindset. So the Upanishads argued, you need to act. Whether it be going for a run, doing the splits, or punching a bag, you need to act. And in business, it means you need to experiment. And when you experiment, which is really what innovation is, if you do so in a manner where you put your mind right into the experiment, I'm going to try and engage with a new client. I'm going to try and understand how to learn and work across a screen very effectively, whatever that action might be. In doing so, you double down on the things that are working, you ignore the things that aren't, and from there you move into a new way of operating. So in dealing with the crisis or dealing with pressure and stress, allowing it to remain in your mind is of absolutely no value. You have to act to move yourself out of depression. And the reason it's so important, understanding that change curve, is because firstly, unless you know where you are in that change curve itself, you won't know whether you have right mind or not. I'm working with a very, very well established steel product manufacturer. This guy runs a 180 million rand business, which he started 16 years ago. Extremely successful. He cannot see anything positive in the change that COVID has brought to us. And the irony behind it is I can only see the positive. And it is because not he has a brain, he works hard, he is gifted in that he's smart, he's well educated, he has all the features of what makes somebody successful, as we are told. But he cannot lift himself out of a depressed state. He is battling to do so. And because of that, he's missing opportunities left, right, and center. So firstly, before you do anything, in your business, get your headspace right. In the second instance, every single one of your clients is somewhere on that change curve. And when you engage with them, unless you can first connect with where they are on that change curve, your ability to have the right kind of conversation with them is not possible. Because depending on how we choose to look at the world, we will only see and hear what we want to see and hear. And the issue of money and wealth, especially in very, very uncertain times, is a business of psychology before it's a business of product. And if you don't get that psychology right, if you don't figure out how to engage with someone at the 5 different stages in the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross curve, you're never going to get through in terms of your messaging. So that's at a fundamentally human level. Incidentally, it also applies to your team. The people you've employed, the salaries you're paying, the pressure around carrying those salaries, it largely applies there too. So I would implore all of you to go and look up Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I don't want to take up time going into much more detail around it, because it really is, I have found it for me personally, one of the most profoundly valuable things I've ever done. I've read extensively around it. I've understood it. I've used it not only to manage myself, but to really engage with other people. So we'll put that aside. Most important thing, I think, quite honestly, is mindset. Incidentally, if we have questions around these, please raise your hand and we'll pause for a minute and dig in. Paul.
Okay, so Pavlo, the question I've got just on that you've just raised was, often one doesn't really, well, I'll say one doesn't know, but I think one will know whether they're not in the right headspace. But sometimes you need an external perspective. You know, where somebody actually says to you, you know what, you know, you really are being really negative, or almost like just a reflection of exactly where you're at. So it's sort of assessing, okay, like where is my headspace right now is the one question I'm asking myself. And sort of how do I know where I am sort of on the scale, or whether I'm on the right track? And then the other question I would ask myself is, if I'm not in the right headspace, what is the starting point to act or to change that?
Okay, good questions. So let's get, it's actually a very interesting question, because in effect what it's saying, who studied physics? Yes, me. God, I'm such a nerd, honestly. Did you, Kevin? Kevin, do you remember who Heisenberg was? Heisenberg uncertainty.
Yeah, they did the uncertainty principle.
Yeah, exactly. Heisenberg was the guy who said, things are almost impossible to measure when there is change. And he said, you can't measure the instance of placing a stick in the middle of a desert, because a desert is constantly moving. And how do you measure something that's moving? Because if you measure it here, by the time you get the data back, it's here. So therefore, that data in relation to the particle is no longer relevant. So your question is really interesting in the sense that unless you can anchor a view of a destination, when you're out at sea and you're being buffeted by the wind and the waves and the storms and the currents, you don't know if you're on track. You don't know if you're on track to achieving and reaching your destination. So a second tool to start a business with is to turn around and say, why do I do what I do? And there are 2 purposes and 2 elements to it. The first is personal, like what matters to me. If you don't do something that you believe in, and Desigan, you and I have had lots of conversations around this. If you don't do something you believe in, and you can't see yourself being authentic in achieving what it is you want to achieve, and believing that you are being in service. Because doing what you do to simply make money is profoundly unsustainable. I have not seen people endure the journey that it takes to make money on a major scale in a sustainable way. So if money is the focus, I think it's very, very hard to maintain and sustain that as a purposeful life. So you need to make a determination about, why do I do what I do? Who do I care about? And why does it matter to me? So let me share it with you in terms of my perspective. I took a decision, and I'm going to ask Arifa, please excuse me for this example, because I am going to say the word bacon. So bear with me. Bear with me on this. Trust me and bear with me on this. I took a decision, and I cannot remember what led up to it. When I look at it, there were a whole lot of things that I can trace back that led to this decision, where I turned around and said, life, society is made up of bacon and eggs. So it's an English breakfast without the grapefruit juice, without the tea, and without the toast. Okay. And I took a decision that said, the eggs are politicians, because politicians eat. They don't create, they eat. They eat off our taxes. The eggs are, oh, I'm going to get into trouble for this. In many ways, corporate CEOs. Because a corporate CEO steps into a corporate, and when they leave, another corporate CEO steps into the corporate. And they eat off shareholders' money. Maybe the eggs could be people in religious institutions, academic institutions. I went through a very detailed analysis, and then I said, okay, they're eggs because they participate in society. And there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of them are needed. Quite a few aren't, but a lot of them are needed. So who's the bacon then? Because in the breakfast, the bacon really commits. It commits everything it has. Without committing, there ain't no bacon. And when I looked around last, it was the not business owners, but growth-orientated business owners. I'll give you a very interesting stat. And Doug, you would have seen this with your time in the UK. There are 5.7 million businesses in the UK. 8,000 of them do more than £30 million a year of revenue. 245,000 of them do more than £1 million of revenue. That means 99.7% of all businesses in the UK do under £1 million. And in that process, they create jobs for themselves and jobs for a few others. And they've opted not to grow for various reasons. They had some bad experiences, Kevin, perhaps like you had. They turned on and said, if you want something done properly, do it yourself. And I will say, that's not a people issue, that is a design issue in a business. So if I look at the mid-tier businesses in the UK, of which there are 42,000 in South Africa, with only 800 businesses doing more than 100 million rands of taxable income a year in South Africa, we've got 40 to 45,000 businesses that operate between 12 and 300 million rands a year of annual revenue. And then we have arguably about 4.2 million businesses doing less than that. A lot of those are in the informal economy. If we look at who the bacon is that individual who invests everything they have to grow a business, be of value and be of service to the customers and clients they serve. So if you look at that thesis, you now understand what drives me. And because I believe in that so profoundly and so deeply, I don't experience negativity and I don't experience problems. I just simply see puzzles, things that need to be overcome to get to the other side. So the first thing you've got to get right when you want to position a business where you will be able to stand out and be distinguished in a very competitive space is decide who you serve and why. And Mark, you've been really clever in your positioning, because positioning is where it all begins. If you can't see where you're sailing to, every storm will feel like an impediment, and every wind will feel like an obstacle, and every current will pose itself as the straw that eventually breaks your camel's back. But if you can see where you're sailing to, and it gives you meaning, because you've decided that that's what you care about, every single one of those obstacles is simply a problem. And overcoming those problems or simply a puzzle. And in finding the solution to the puzzle, you emerge stronger, you emerge with more vigor around why you're doing what you're doing. And that has profound implications, not only on your energy, but on what you choose to see as an opportunity and what you choose not to see. So when I meet business owners, they turn around and say, Hal, you know what makes us special? Kevin, it's our products. Desigan, it's our price. Tian, oh, no, it's our service. It's our service. Or Johan, it's relationships. I listen to all of that, and what I'm hearing is the second decision you need to make. And the second decision is, are you doing what you do to earn an income, or are you doing what you do to build an asset? And we spoke about this in the main webinar. And the difference between the two is profound. There are a lot of people who are really good at what they do. And when I look at how they earn their income, and in the instance of business owners, I've seen people who have got businesses doing 30, 40 million rand a year, but without them there, it evaporates. And Matthew, when you make your PE investments, your private equity investments, I would bet you look really, really closely to see, are you investing in an individual, or are you investing in a system that generates the value in that business? Because if you're opting to earn an income, then your strategy is going to be around how you find, nurture, and craft and sustain relationships, knowing full well that it will earn you good income for the period that you have them, but it will put you in a position that without you there is no income. And Mark, that's going to be one of your biggest challenges, because the old way of your industry that you're in, we were taught consistently, it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships. And often when I walk into some of my clients who are financial advisors, and I step into their office, and what do I see? There's no wall space left, because there is certificate after certificate after certificate after reward after reward after certificate after reward around what fantastic relationship managers they were. And I don't decry that, and I don't diminish it. But in each of those instances, they're looking at me and saying, shit, if I'm not working, there's nothing here. How do I turn 10, 15, 20, 30 years into an asset that I can eventually transfer on and sell, so that at least I have the capital gain to add to my wealth? Mark?
Yeah, something you said there, Pavlo, makes a lot of sense, and it's something I've thought about, because having that niche, it is a lot about the relationship. But what we've tried to do over the last year, since making the move to Cape Town, is systematize the business in how we deliver that experience to the client. So kind of thinking with the end goal in mind, if I had to sell the business, our value proposition to our clients is it's quite a fixed approach in terms of our meetings and what we offer and when we offer them, how often we do those meetings within a month, the invoicing system to clients, the online calendar integration that we've used when those notifications go out. So it's kind of a, typically when you value a financial planning business, it's a multiple of revenue. But there's a lot of uncertainty with regards to that. Does the revenue stay? Doesn't it stay? So I've kind of looked at it and said, well, if I can build a business that's built on processes, so there's an integration here, there, you're selling the system. So all you really need is somebody who kind of believes in my why I work with these women, and why. So if they've got that mindset, then you've got a business that they just need to plug into.
Completely right. So let me give you a great example using your clientele, but in a completely separate industry. So the work with BMW was fascinating because there were 54 dealer principals, 24 of them were privately owned. So they were privately owned either through succession in families or individuals who have decided they believe in the brand. And the big problem with the brand is that a brand, if it's a big brand, basically makes you lazy. It puts you in a position as a business owner, if you represent the brand, where you're saying, but the brand itself will attract people. The brand itself, sheer driving pleasure, performance, quality, will attract people. One of the most fascinating insights, Mark, is when we did this work 6 years ago, we discovered that the nature of the 3 Series BMW buyer had changed. About 12 years ago, it was mostly up-and-coming white males. 6, 7 years ago, the nature of that client had changed to progressive, advancing, Black, females working in the service sector. Now, what BMW had not changed was their promotional campaigns, because their promotional campaigns were all centered around golf days. And in the instance of one dealership that we worked with in the KZN region, this chap turned around and said, we're not getting any of these ladies to our golf days. What do we need to do differently? And this is where positioning becomes so important, because there were 54 other providers of the same product, as there are thousands of people who provide the same products that you provide. So 54 providers of the same product. And this one dealer principal decided he was going to tackle this particular market segment. So he went and he engaged extensively with up-and-coming progressive Black females in the services industry that were being put into accelerated management positions. Because actually, women do make better managers, especially in administrative intensive sectors. And what emerged was a system of selling that worked like this, a system of selling. He would send a message to that particular segment with a proposition that spoke to what a BMW represents. It wasn't about safety, because that didn't matter. A lot of these women were not concerned about safety as an issue. They were more concerned about their careers. So the messaging that went out was to demonstrate that you are progressing well in life, that you're advancing well in life, that you're climbing effectively the corporate ladder. You would typically associate yourself with products that represent success. So beyond sheer driving pleasure, beyond performance, He changed the messaging he communicated around BMW to represent a symbol of success. When people came in for the test drive, they were treated in a very particular way. They were treated as if they were billionaires, as opposed to, hi, let me lift the hood. Because with respect, that customer segment has no interest in what lies underneath the hood. That customer segment wanted to be sat down in a lounge area with a massive screen that would show aspirant images of BMWs traversing the hills, arriving at offices, delivering presidents and prime ministers, delivering celebrities. So the association is, if that's a symbol of success, and that's how I see myself, this is the right product for me. And from there, when they made the acquisition, how was the car delivered? They would secure an appointment at the person's place of work. And that car would be delivered in a manner where they would see how to park the car so that from the office block, everybody could see that the car has arrived. The car would be parked, the car would be packaged, an enormous ribbon would be put onto it, and the individual would be called down from the offices to come collect the keys. And in doing so, all her colleagues would see that she had just secured her BMW. And what did that do? It created massive word of mouth in amongst the people just like her that wanted and aspired to the same things that she had aspired to. It took 2 years, and he became the most dominant seller of the 3 Series BMW. Because, of course, what it did is all of this was filmed and converted into digital media and posted on that individual's Facebook site, which she then posted to all her friends who wanted the same experience. And guys, it's no different to your sector and your industry. Because, Paul, if you try and work with entrepreneurs, and you try and work with doctors, and you try and work with employees in the media industry, and you try and work with employees in the pharmaceutical industry, every industry, every person has a type of culture. They have some affinity for what it is that they do. And when you try and work with anyone and everyone, you eventually become vanilla. There's nothing that says, you get me, Johan, you understand me. If I listen carefully to what you've said, you should be building your clientele in the healthcare pharma industry, because you understand the culture of that sector. You understand how people think in that sector. Guys, if you look at it, very few people switch sectors, very few people. And the reason they don't switch sectors is because once you enter into a sector and you find a sector that you enjoy, you tend to stick around in that sector. And every sector has a different culture, it has a different set of values, it has a different way of looking at the world. The mining sector looks at things very differently to the hospitality sector. And people who succeed in the mining sector fail miserably in the hospitality sector. In the same role, in the same position, because culturally they don't identify with that sector. I go back to what I said about your industry. Your industry is profoundly psychological. Before it has any rational sense around how people invest, they need to feel that you are communicating and identifying with them on their set of values. Because if you talk to me in a way where I feel you hear and understand me, then I will trust you. And that trust quotient is what gets your business done. So taking this right back, let's go back to that BMW agency that decided to tackle the Black up-and-coming professional services sector female. It is a massive segment. And to the extent that he went and further and deeper understood not only that client in terms of demographics, okay, Black, female, age group, location, employment status, you know, that type of marketing stuff, but he understood them on a psychographic profile. What makes that segment of customers tick? What media do they watch? Who do they admire? What's offensive to them? What excites them as an idea? Johan?
Apologies, your sound went for a second and I thought something went wrong with your microphone. Sorry.
Great. And in understanding that, he was able to craft communications that resonated with that set of values. And because, I'm going to give you a different way of putting it. So I walk past the store and I see two folders. And I think to myself, you know, I need a folder. I need a folder to put all my notes in, or whatever the case might be. And the one folder is 150 Rand, a black folder, and the other folder is 200 Rand. And that folder is covered in cellophane and printed across it in a upward right moving direction. It says, for the entrepreneur on the go. So I walk into the store. Now I'm an entrepreneur and I count the pennies because I'm completely self-funded in every sense of the word. That's what a business owner is. And I pick up which folder? Arifa, which one?
The folder for the entrepreneur, because it resonates with you, obviously.
Don't be crazy. I'm sensible. I'm logical, right? Yeah. So I pick up the 150 Rand folder and I open it. And it is double stitched, genuine leather. And inside it says, double stitched, genuine leather, business card holder, pen holder, whatever it says. I look at it and I say, this will do. But let me just have a look at the other one in any event, because it's 50 Rand more. And I pick it up and I open it and it says inside, double stitched durability for the business, for the entrepreneur on the go. Business card holder for deals to be done. Leather to endure airports, offices, ships, planes, and eventually for you, space. And I swear to God, as I look at that folder, the double stitching looks better. The business card holder can hold more cards. And the quality of the leather is without any question of doubt better. So I walk out with the 200 Rand product of the exact same thing. If you and your businesses do not connect to your clients' on that level, you're competing with thousands of other people on the exact same products. And then it becomes a pricing game. And that is a shitty place to be in any business. So, Paul, knowing whether you are on track or not from a mindset point of view is absolutely impossible if you don't start with the end in mind first.
Yeah.
Because like sailing a ship, you leave a harbor to reach a destination. And over a period of time, you measure your progress to that destination.
Right.
And if that destination is made up of, I will sell anything to anybody, because everybody needs financial wealth advice, which everybody does need.
Mm.
It becomes impossible to know whether you're making any progress or not. And it becomes impossible, especially if I may say, Paul, for someone like you, who thinks deeply and thinks, who thinks in your brain a lot, as I saw the way you wrote your messages to me. You become wrapped up in a cycle in your own brain as opposed to measuring yourself from the outside. Your second question, I'm yet to meet someone who's ever achieved remarkable success on their own. I don't believe, oh, no, I'm wrong. Trump has, because he's told us consistently that he has. You know, he knows everything. But for most normal people out there, I've never met someone who's done it on their own. Whether it be Elon Musk, whether it be Adrian Gore, or anyone else who you think is profoundly remarkable. Not one. Not one. Jeff Bezos got to where he got to largely because in the first 25 years of his wife, she held his head right and gave him perspective. Warren Buffett got to where he got to largely because of Charlie Munger. And most of the smart people I know go and look for a perspective, not from someone they necessarily like, but for someone who has either a combination of experience or a way of engaging that you can permit yourself to engage back with. And what I mean by that is, to the extent that you know yourself, you might feel that you need to find a mentor, a coach, an advisor, a colleague, a friend, whoever it may be, that is more nurturing, or someone who's going to have tough love in how they engage. And you need to put your ego aside, and you need to understand that it's never ever personal. But if you don't get perspectives outside of your own world, you don't know what you don't know, and you get stuck in it, and it's a complete waste of time.
So can I comment on what you've just said? And my comment is this, and this is where I'm actually having a discussion with some of the guys in my own FSP with regard to this, is that, you know, now you say, so I'll tell you this. So I know that I need a half day or a full-time employed PA. Okay, I know that. But someone telling me to my face to say, Paul, you need to get a PA, it's not helpful, because I know that. What I find more helpful is help me get to where I need to be, let's say financially, to be able to employ somebody. How do I do that practically? Okay, help me become more efficient, help me make other changes in my business that free me up from doing, you know, whatever I need to do. So let's say, for example, if I say to you, Pavlo, for me to be able to employ a PA to grow my business more, or to become, you know, less autonomous, I need to achieve a financial goal of $500,000 a year, or 600,000 or 800,000 a year. How do we get there? Yes,
okay.
You know what I'm saying? It's almost like people saying to you, you know, I find you sit in all of these branch meetings like Johan was talking about, and they talk about the new sales trick, or maybe the sales trick, which, you know, for me, that's not helpful.
No, it's not.
Or to say to you, or you sit in a meeting and someone says, "Yo, you must get on board with technology, and you must, you know, it'll make you more efficient. It'll make you do this. Da, 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 da." It's like, for me, what's the point of that? Show me.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's tackle that question. Johan, you raised your hand quickly there. Do you want to comment quickly on it? Because I definitely want to get through that piece. I know we're at 11:30. I'm prepared to invest more time here if you're all happy for another 15 minutes or so, if that works with everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. Johan, very quickly.
I had the wonderful privilege of having a coach when I joined Liberty, a gentleman by the name called Kurt Schultz. And when I joined Liberty, I had no money, nothing. And the first thing that he did was he forced me to employ an assistant.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. And that was probably the most strategic thing that I did in the first year of my business. And Paul, it's quite simple. Do a calculation of what the income is that you would like to earn, reduce it down to an hourly rate. Then look at what an assistant will cost you.
Yes.
And you will see that with 2 or 3 hours of your time being freed up by such a person,
yes,
will equate to a week or 2 weeks salary by way of comparison. It's a simple numbers game. I employ the person immediately. Find the right person, employ them immediately, the money will follow.
Yeah, it often does. And it is a leap of faith to a degree. But Paul, here's the other thing. If you understand who it is that you want to serve, and you understand how to reach them, and once you reach them, you understand how to engage with them in a manner that they agree to work with you. Immediately what you've done over there, in understanding who it is you want to serve, you're going to create a series of activities in a sequence that can be measured to find and reach and communicate with that audience. So if it is, in the case of that BMW dealership, Black females in the services sector who are professionals and accelerating their careers, there were 2 or 3 message structures that this dealership used to communicate with those audiences. He also knew where to find them, because birds of a feather really do gather together. It's all he focused on, as opposed to the other BMW dealerships. Yeah, we've got some Black females over here, then we've got some farmers over there for the X5s, then we've got some executives, white male executives who are looking for safety or blah, blah, blah. Then we've got the family, da, 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 da. Then we've got this, then we've got that. So they would have to, if they had 15 different types of clients they were trying to reach, they would have to create 15 different types of systems to market, reach, and communicate with those clients. If you don't simplify, you can't scale. If you don't simplify, you can't employ. If you don't simplify to a point where you can create the system to generate the leads that's measurable, you can't employ someone to operate the system for you. Because your alternative would be to get someone in and say, market the BMWs to anyone and everyone.
Yes.
So how do you employ that person? How do you manage that person? How do you control that person? Kevin, how do you know whether that person is creating nightmares for you or not? And whether they are truly performing in the task that you have set for them or not? Because employing people is absolutely crucial if you want to ever grow beyond yourself. Yeah. Employing people is vital if you want to turn a practice into a business or into an asset. But the way that you employ people needs to be based on why you do what you do, who you serve, and how to simply communicate with them, how to simply engage with them, and then simply how you administer them in the delivery of the product or service. And certainly the way that I approach it, when I first started one of my businesses, I mapped out every single process. And then I looked to see what I could remove and simplify further.
Okay.
And then when I employed my first person, I said to them, I need you to perform activity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a sequence at this time of the month. And if you achieve that outcome, I will pay you. Do you want the opportunity or don't you? And to the extent that you achieve that outcome, you get paid X. And if you overperform in that outcome, you get paid X plus Y. And I only need you for a day a week. And that was the early stage of starting. But if I never understood how to simplify my processes, I would be employing that someone and saying, I need you to just come on board and help take away some of the pressure. Okay, Pavlo, what pressure do I need to help you with? Okay, can you do this for me? Okay, I'll do that for me. And then I'm working away. And the person comes back and says, okay, Pavlo, I've done it for you. You know, can I make a cup of tea? Yeah, that would be great, thank you. And I carry on working away.
If I'm honest, it sounds like my setup.
Arifa.
So my question was very much centered around the statement that Wesley made, where he said he is a one-man band and he does everything himself. And it related very much to a trust issue. But I suppose you've kind of answered that question in the sense that you've said that if you structure it in a way where you're very clear about what is expected and you're managing that expectation, then you shouldn't actually have that problem because you're remunerating based on the outcomes and that should be fine. Am I on the right track?
Completely right. I mean, it's the only way to do it. I fundamentally believe, I'll tell you a story. About 5 years ago, I had to make a presentation to 300 rednecks in the United States. It was in Detroit and it was bloody scary because they're cross-looking people most of the time. And it was at the Crane Business Chamber and I was speaking to this audience and I turned on and I said something. I also said this in the book that I recently wrote and a couple of people gave me flack for it. They turned on and they said, I turned on and I said, you know what, to be unemployed is largely, not always, but largely a choice. And they said, how can you say that? The one chap, Jim, stood up and said, he said, my grandfather worked for Ford. My father worked for Ford his entire life. I worked for Ford until 3 years ago. Then I was made redundant in a flash. I live in Detroit. I've nowhere else to go. I've been unemployed for 3.5 years. I cannot find work anywhere else. And you say that's my responsibility. And I said to them, yeah, look, you know, in my view, an employee needs to make themselves constantly valuable to you as a business owner. Because if they don't, why do they deserve the opportunity of employment? Matthew, going back to the comment you made, we should demand value from our employees in the same way that we ourselves have to be responsible about how we hire and employ people. If you don't employ people to operate a system you have built, and you employ people to simply take away pressure from you, you're setting them up to fail and you're setting yourself up to fail. Because if we don't have those systems, all the comments around digitization also become valuable. Going back to what you said earlier, Paul, adopt technology. Adopt technology to do what? If I don't understand that I'm using the technology to market or to support selling or to support delivery of my service, which I can't understand unless I know who it is I serve, so I know how to market to them, and when they engage with me, how to sell to them, and when they buy from me, how to deliver to them in a way that says, I understand you, I get you, I feel you, you've come to the right place, you can trust me. If I haven't mapped out that process in activities in a sequence that can be measured, A, I cannot employ responsibly, and I won't get bang for buck from my employees, and I'll develop a negative attitude towards employing people with respect. And the only person who's getting shot in the foot for that is me, myself, because it means then I have no ability to grow beyond myself. And oh man, I hope it really doesn't happen to anyone. But if I land up getting COVID and I land up getting sick, well, then I've got nothing. And then the second thing that it prevents you doing is saying, okay, you say adopt technology, but what technology and why? Because unless you understand your business, you cannot make a decision on technology. Johan, you took a massive leap of faith and it worked out for you. I promise you that is more unusual than not. Most people buy what used to be a beautifully packaged CD in a box. You know, I'd simply download it. But you go into an app store for marketing support technology, and there are over 3,000 different solutions. Which one do you buy? How do you evaluate it if you yourself don't understand how to market your business? How do you understand how to market your business if you don't know who you're selling to? Because if you don't know who you're selling to, how do you learn to communicate with them in a way that your marketing message will land? And that's why it always goes to starting with the end in mind. I quickly want to cover, just in the last few minutes, the issues you raised, Matthew, around government and COVID and regulation. So on Sunday, I watched our president talk on TV again. And my understanding was that everybody has to behave in a certain way, but religious leaders can gather 50 people together and taxis can operate at 100% capacity. Okay. And I sat back and I switched on Twitter and I was looking at all these sarky comments that came out. And I thought to myself, but what other choice did he have? Imagine coming down on the taxi industry, where government has failed consistently for 30 years to do this. And yet at the same time, we have started to peak with COVID infections. In my view, he did the best that he could do. And then I sat back and thought to myself, either way, nothing really matters. Because I'll tell you what change does. And this is why all of us on the screen, the mere fact that you all arrived here for this session immediately says that you have got growth intent, that you have entrepreneurial mindset. And the entrepreneurial mindset is one that says, problem, what could the solution be? Act. The mere fact that we are in a crisis means a couple of things. The clients you've never been able to reach because they already have a financial wealth advisor. If that financial wealth advisor continues to support them in the same way he or she did before this crisis, the likelihood of them being relevant in the changed circumstances of those customers' lives today is low. Because what a crisis does is it changes the status quo for the duration that the crisis is there. And if you don't figure out how to capitalize on that, then you miss out on the crisis altogether. There are certain industries and sectors that have been hit really hard. This goes again to saying, who do you serve and how do you serve them? if I'm trying to be all things to all people, I would never be able to see the signals of change because I'm looking everywhere and anywhere and I'm developing no depth of insight and relationship into a particular sector. So if I look at the mining sector and I look at the hospitality sector, if my clients were largely in the hospitality sector, no doubt they're in dire, dire, dire straits. When the lockdown came, or before the lockdown arrived, if I had not reached out to every single one of my clients in the hospitality sector and shared with them the probable implications that they're going to go through, and demonstrated how I could create either a product or service or a response to them to ease the challenges they will be facing. And when the lockdown occurred, I simply phoned them and asked them if, for a check-in call. The difference between those two from an experience point of view is profound. Because here's the thing about this crisis. If I had focused in on the hospitality sector, and my career had been built in hospitality, where all my social networks and friendships and work relationships, they're all extensively in the hospitality sector, because that's a sector I've been involved in for 15 years or 20 years. And the moment Desigan reaches out to me and provides me with an insight into what is coming and how he thinks he can work with me to get through to the other side, the moment I hear about colleagues and partners and customers and clients of mine who are struggling in the hospitality sector, concerned about their economy and their income and their well-being, I have a discussion with them that Desigan shared with me. The next minute, before Desigan is aware of it, he becomes a central point that understands the hospitality sector. And he uses a language, and he uses a method of communication, and he uses a method of engagement that is absolutely sensitized to people who operate in that sector. That's what distinguishing yourself in a competitive market means. Those activities, that way of communicating, he builds into a set of activities in a sequence that can be measured. And in a flash, he's able to upskill and capacitate his staff to make sure that the communications and engagement that goes out is adjusted to cope with the change and the crisis. And whilst they're managing the clients he has, what should he be doing? In the COVID lockdown, he should be building up a database of every single person that he can possibly find in the hospitality sector with the view to engage with them on a relationship basis that would demonstrate through his language, sensitivities, and insight into hospitality that, yes, he gets me. This is the person to go to. Now, the way government deals with COVID has no play in that. And whether the economy in South Africa is growing or not has no play in that either. But for the individual who's trying to be all things to all people, you will never develop the opportunity to capitalize on the change experienced by someone in COVID if everyone you serve is having a fundamentally different experience around COVID. Because it's just not possible that you can either create a system behind it or wrap your brain around it. It's just humanly impossible. So Matthew, I really don't care what governments do and say. I look at my clients in the US, I look at the clients in the UK, I look at my clients over here, and I find politics fascinating. I'm obsessed with the American elections because it is more entertaining than anything else on Netflix. But honestly, to my mind, it really doesn't matter. Because if you're building a business up to kind of 150, 200 odd million rand, for so long as you are focused in who you serve and you can move fairly fast because you've got good systems to understand what changes need to be made, you will grow by eating your competitor's lunch. Guys, I know we've gone over time, horribly over time. I really apologize for that. I just want to go around the room very quickly and grab any last comments. I hope it's been valuable to you, and I hope that you can take some of what I've shared with you and make it useful within your own businesses. Kevin, should we start with you quickly?
I've been fascinated with what you're saying, and just because I said I didn't want employees doesn't mean I don't recognise the fact that I should have some.
Of course, you should.
I just I need to get my head into the space where it makes me comfortable. But in terms of accessing my niche, I already know what my niche is. What you've said focuses that, and I deal ostensibly with people like me. So despite my native Cape Townian accent, you might be amazed to understand I'm actually English. But I deal a lot with foreign people who come to live here, just like me, and it's a good market to be involved with. But I don't market to that. It just sort of sometimes quite a lot falls in my lap. But what you're suggesting and telling me is that I should work out how I can go and address those people further, and get more to come. So,
without a doubt, the fact that you already have a niche sets you apart. It puts you in the top 2-3% in your sector. Yeah. Honestly. Now you just need to articulate the systems to bring that niche to life, with you hopefully not being in the center of it at all.
Yeah, yeah.
That'll give you a very, very neat exit, 5-10 years from now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Desigan.
Pav, I just want to say thank you for the clarity that I was seeking. What I realized is I've joined a group of guys at AdviceWorks that have mastered the processes, the systems, the communication, the digital platforms. They've literally spent their years of experience. Ian van Score, as I mentioned, is keen to have a coffee with you at some point. And from the beginning, when I met with the team, Mike Galloway and all the other heads that be, deep down inside, my gut told me, this is it. Here's the opportunity you've been waiting for. And COVID-19 hasn't dissuaded me from joining the group. The challenge that I mentioned as I was facing is finding my core purpose again. And through this discussion, you've taken me back to my personal vision, which I actually defined back in Standard 8, what they call grade 10, before I even completed my studies in CA. And all the years I've been fitting and molding my core being into the corporate way of life and redefining what I truly stand for to fit into the corporate and the institution's way. What I got out of this was that I don't need to change who I am any longer.
You will not succeed if you're not authentic in who you serve.
Correct.
I'm going to use a very corny word because, you shouldn't use this word when you speak to business people. But you need to truly love the people that you serve. You need to have that feeling of love for them. I love private business owners, genuinely. There's very little I would not do. And it was simply a decision I took, and it has provided me with boundless energy. So if it's not authentic to who you are or the journey you've traveled, it's simply not sustainable.
Correct. And my clients have called that bullshit time and time again, which has also assisted me. They were open and honest with me. I realized that like attracts like as well. And that the people that I have worked with or my customers that I've attracted or have been attracted to me within the institutions is what I need to focus on, because that is a message unto itself.
Absolutely right. Good.
I've got exactly and so much more that I aim for from this webinar. And I thank you. Thank you, everybody. Wish you all well.
Tim. 30 seconds, mate.
30 seconds. Yeah, I mean,
it's about right thinking and the mindset, and I was focusing on pricing and being everything to everyone, and I need to really hone in on and articulating who I want to serve and help. And I just thanks for your time, thanks for the clarity of thoughts, and it's time that I get some perspective outside of my field, and we don't know what we don't know, and I want to learn. And the big message I got is to act. I tend to overthink. I tend to plan out.
You and Paul, truth is only ever found in action. I promise you. Truth is only ever found in action. Take small steps, act in small ways, so if it fails, there's no pain and there's no cost.
Yes.
If you take a big bet and you act on it before you understand it, and it doesn't work out, it'll sink you. But act, because you learn about yourself, you learn about your market, you learn about your business. Matthew.
Pavlo, thanks. Firstly, from my sort of side, and excuse the directness, but certainly needed a kick up the rear end because it is a negative environment. And my wife keeps on telling me that as well, that I've been a bit negative. Just a couple of things. We're not trying to build an income. We're trying to build an asset. Okay, and that's pretty much what you try and do across the board. We are trying to change the industry. Okay, and there's quite a lot of flux in the industry. Certainly, what I've seen in the last couple of days, ESG around the world on the backbone of COVID is picking up. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in financial services going forward, because I think things are going to change. The one thing that we are trying to do is be accountable and meet our promise. And I think that is quite important now. What I've seen is, because if I just take the insurance industry for an example, people have been paying insurance policies and people have reneged on the insurance policies as a result of the Black Swan event. That's just not good enough. So as an example, there's a lot of case studies around the world where what we're trying to adopt, where if we employ people, they've got to go and work in other parts of the business. We do not only have a hospital, we have we have a frail care facility as well. And I think as an example there, we will put guys in the frail care for 3 months. Why? Because when you see at the end part of life, okay, what it does from a poor advice or poor investment point of view, you realize these things it's quite an important industry. Okay, so Ryanair is a very good example, or management. Because, you said employees, okay, need to better themselves. I always start at the top. I think management around the world need to better themselves. A lot of the companies in South Africa are proof of that. If SA had decent management, employees wouldn't be unemployed. So that's the products. We tend to be mainly focused on investment product. The systems, I'm seeing systems becoming cheaper and cheaper. If you do alliances, you can get the systems for free. So technology, I see it as a value add in a business. I don't see it as a differentiator, because I can get it from somebody else for actually very little. Our target market, I think, I've struggled with this, because everybody wants to focus on the ultra wealthy, but we do try and look after fairly sophisticated clients, and no disrespect to anybody else, but guys that really want to invest abroad. And I don't know, Pavlo, from your sort of side, I don't know if this type of webinar is like, and I apologize again for being late, but is this a continuous thing? Is this going to be on numerous occasions? I've enjoyed it. It's given me energy.
Excellent. Well, look, I'll let you know about that, because there'll be emails going out to everybody afterwards. in any event. So, but thank you for the contribution. We all need to kick up the arse every now and then, I promise you. Even when you're doing well, especially when you're doing well, in fact. So thank you, that was a good insight. Johan, very quickly, I'm sorry I've taken so much time, guys. I really apologize.
Firstly, thank you very much. Time is not an issue. In fact, I'm very disappointed that we have to terminate this. I need to simplify. System building I need to be done. When is the next session? And what do I owe you for this time? Because it's been very, very valuable.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We'll send an email out to you afterwards. Wesley, then Paul, very quickly. Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry about the time.
Just very quickly from my side, everyone, thank you for sharing your stories. I think I learned quite a bit from hearing all of your walks of life and where you guys come from and how you ended up where you are. Thank you for the positivity, and then Pavlo, also the pearls of wisdom. And it's definitely given me sort of 2 or 3 real points to focus on where I really think I can derive a lot of value, especially for the query that I had initially. So thank you for that. And yes, thank you for hosting.
Excellent, fantastic. Paul.
For a moment there, I thought you were going to say to Johan, where can I send the invoice? But yeah, listen, thank you very much again for your time. I think just maybe a big thank you to the guys at Innate. Maybe we don't say this enough, but I found out of all the webinars and stuff that actually get sent out. I mean, we've been so bombarded by them over the last 3 months as people have cottoned on to the whole online thing. Their webinars have been really fantastic, and I really think they're cut above the rest. So yeah, thank you to Innate. And then just, I think a key takeaway for me is just, I think the change in thinking of, I've always been sort of taught, clients do business with people they know, like, and trust. If somebody trusts you but they don't like you, they're still probably not going to do business with you. So the other thing is people don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. So, I think a lot of those things I do understand and I've got right. So I have a better understanding as to where I need to focus my time and energy and getting things a bit more streamlined, simplified, using technology as an enabler, not a differentiator. And then I think a big thing for me is in the financial planning space, like you say, we've always been taught it's about relationships, and you make the business about yourself and about the relationship. And so in my mind, I'm sort of thinking, okay, so, what is the key differentiator in my business? Is it me? Or is it I can't remember who said this, but the service experience, the advice experience, creating that experience for the client and building an asset as opposed to building that asset, on the relationship, the value of the relationship. That's the core, the center of the business. And so I think it would maybe, if I could reframe it and say, okay, it's not going to be Paul, your financial planner, but it's going to be a Paul advice experience. So I've almost got to create a Paul service advice experience in my business.
I cannot. Okay, and I say this with respect, Paul. I'm in a very fortunate position, which has taken time to build, and we've got about 600-700 clients around the world. So I'm not trying to make a sale. Get it and read it, please.
Okay.
I'm begging you. I'm begging all of you. Because it will deepen this conversation on such a profound level. And it holds the answer to so many of the questions here. I'm really not trying to make a sale of a book. I promise you. I think it will be enormously valuable to you. enormously valuable. It's very practical. It's story told. It's not a dry, horrible business book. It's about people like you and me. I want to, Arifa, Doug, can I very quickly, just 30 seconds from each of you, and then we'll end the session. And I would ask that Doug and Arifa and Webinar, if you could stay online, please, for just a minute afterwards. Arifa.
Thank you. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that joined, and to you especially, Pavlo. This was a very valuable session. I think the two biggest things I got out of this was your mindset is all, and that you need to distinguish yourself. And I think that that is going to be the key driver going forward. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Doug?
Thanks, Arifa. I'm certainly just going to echo that. Thank you, Pavlo, and thank you to the rest of you. It's really, really good insights, both in what you're currently doing in your businesses and what you need to make your businesses better. Our role is to feed back to the rest of the BDMs, and we'll certainly do that to work out how we can better serve you. Our BDMs are a diverse bunch of people, and we spend a lot of time in working out which people to approach. So there has been switching of advisors between BDMs so that we can do exactly what you're saying, Pavlo. So we're on the right track, but we can certainly do better, and we hope that this session will certainly help us to achieve that. So thank you, and thanks to everyone.
And Doug, you know what, going to the mindset issue that Arifa mentioned, I really mean this in all sincerity. Mindset can either be spoken about, I behave and think like this, or mindset can be enacted. Every single person on this screen here has elected to be here. Because nobody was forced, it was made as an offer, and you elected to be here. I would pour effort into every person on the screen, because if the mindset's already here, it just needs to be translated into action. So guys, thank you very, very much for giving up time. I'm going to apologize for the last time, like Matthew apologized 300 times for being 5 minutes late. I'm going to apologize for stealing an extra 38 minutes from you. Thank you very much, and I wish you well in the journey. I would really ask you to read that book. I think you would find a tremendous amount of value in it, from what I've understood and from what I've been told. But it would answer a lot of the questions around creating distinction, around getting the right mindset, around building systems, once you've understood your niche, about how do you employ and delegate to people in a responsible way that's not going to cost you money, but will rather give you value before it costs you anything. And I wish you the best of luck in the next very interesting 6 months that lie ahead. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Pav.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And you can come back to life. There we go. Guys, were you happy with that?
I think that was great. Thank you very much.
It was very, very good. I think there was a lot of value, and the advisors took a lot from it, and I think they appreciated it very much.
Yeah. It's really interesting. It is such an interesting, you know, Doug, you've seen the industry in the UK. I'm doing a lot of work with financial advisors in the UK at the moment. It is such an interesting space because, you know, the apprehension that's been created around people's well-being, economic well-being in this COVID economy has really created so much change. And, you know, those folks who have decided to zone in, honestly, to zone in and focus on a niche within a niche, are flying as a result of it because their messaging is right, their communications is right. And it's really interesting taking the way somebody behaves to create the experience for a client and to translate that into systems. So when they're not there, the client's experience remains the same as if they were there.
Right.
And that's the edge of competition today. Because a product is a product is a product.
And do you think it applies equally across? It almost seems easier from your example of BMW to do it in a BMW where you've got it. I mean, is it as easy to do in financial services? It almost, yeah. I mean, I guess it takes some time to sit and think about.
You know, I think of two clients in the UK, financial advisors, and the one employs about 12 people. The other one employs, I think, just on 20 or just over 20. The one focuses on financial advice to divorced people only.
Right.
The other focuses, and this is after having fought with them, the other focuses on financial advice to people who have or income interests between the UK and Hong Kong. And that's the niche.
Yeah.
And they have built remarkable businesses. And everyone else is scrambling with everyone else for clients. It's a big scramble. But I look at myself, unless someone can understand my values and unless someone can define the problem I have, the cost of the problem if not solved, and show me within my value set how they understand my problem and how they can solve my problem at a price that leaves value on the table for me. I don't even hear you. I don't even see you. You're invisible to me. Because so many people are trying to sell so many things to me that unless it connects at that level of, at a profound level, at that kind of level, I won't trust you, especially when it comes to managing my money. Definitely not. Definitely not. And that's why a lot of folks who lead these big organizations and go out on their own eventually battle. Because, you know, one would think, well, you know, if it's Liberty, or if it's Investec, or if it's Discovery, or if it's whoever, Old Mutual, you know, Momentum, to the extent that I believe in that big organization's brand, a lot of that heavy lifting is being done for you. But what I'm certainly seeing is that fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer people are believing in big brands. Everyone's become suspicious. I look at myself, I've got a massive problem with my computing at the moment. A week into COVID, my computer seized and I bought a new Dell. And because I travel a lot and because I spend 14, 15 hours a day on it, I went for a top-end machine, 35,000 RAM machine. So it's got, 16 gigs of RAM, or 36 gigs of RAM, so I beg your pardon, a terabyte solid-state drive, blah, 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 super everything. This thing constantly freezes on me. I'm on my third machine, and the CEO of Dell does not understand how to do the right thing. So the impression I had of Dell and the experience I have of Dell are where the schism comes in my understanding of the value of that brand. Because a brand comes to life when things go wrong. A brand doesn't come to life because of the advertising splattered all over the screen and newspapers and billboards. And increasingly, a lot of people that I certainly speak to, and the observations I'm making, is that the trust and faith in big is falling and collapsing everywhere. There's not one person I know who likes their bank, who likes their cell phone network, who now especially likes their short-term insurance broker. That brand is broken. That brand has been broken. So it's really going to rely on the experience. And the experience in itself needs to become the product. Because quite honestly, every product out there is the same. A few little tweaks and changes, but they will, whether it's a BMW or a Mercedes or a Nissan or a Toyota, quite honestly, mechanically, functionally, it's all the same.
so interesting you said that, Pavlo, because that's what we're trying to do at Innate. We're trying to drive the experience more than anything else. And I was quite chuffed with Paul for bringing up the fact that we're doing things differently. It was such a nice way of him saying it as well. And to be honest, that's what we're trying to aim for in terms of the experience and what we're giving to advisors out there, something totally different. So I really enjoyed that.
You know what? I really think one of your best positionings is if you focus on a Paul, right? Because he's so representative of so many financial advisors I've met. Terrified of being in breach of codes and regulations, because you can lose your license. Most of the financial advisors I work with in the UK have eventually migrated to St. James's Place because the administrative compliance regulatory systems are there and in play. And then they can focus on what they do best, which is selling and engaging. And it's a very interesting proposition. The second thing St. James's Place does is when I eventually want to sell. Now, St. James's Place has got a terrible reputation in amongst consumers. So this is the irony, the dichotomy. It's quite bizarre. When I want to sell, and let's say, Aretha, you're going to be the buyer of my business, and you might not have money to pay me out. St. James's Place backs you to buy me out. So I have an exit strategy by being with you.
I think that's quite similar to the AdviceWorks model, and we had two AdviceWorks advisors on the system. Yeah. They can now build a business.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Somebody that can sit in the same office of them. I think Mark Sido mentioned it. Where he goes, he just hands over to one of his colleagues who sits next to him.
Yeah.
All entrepreneurial, still has their own business, but they follow the same system and processes. So it's a seamless transition.
They've understood the problem. They've understood the problem and they've built a solution around the problem.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it applies to every single business out there, Doug, every single business without doubt. And the reason I say that is because it is so competitive that unless you compete on that level, you're competing on price, which means you're going to get smashed. You're competing on product, which means there's nothing sustainable. Or you're competing on service, which means you're committing your life to a life of income only. And that's a tough place to stay and be.
Mm.
Guys, I really need to run.
Yeah, okay, cool. No, we're taking up your time now. But yeah,
my session is...